Hey, it's Gemini, and today we're making two going out tops using mesh fabric for my upcoming trip to Vegas. This is going to be a two-part series where we're going to make some mesh tops for this one, and then our next one's going to be upcycling some blazers, so for blazer thrift flips. So yeah, let's get into our mesh tops. Okay, for our first top, we're going to start with a cropped mock neck, turtleneck, long sleeve mesh top. Wow, that was a mouthful. I got this funky, colorful mesh at the clearance section of Joann's, and I thought this was super cool and fun. I got whatever that was left on the bolt. It was a two-way stretch. So I'm using a pattern that I had made using a mock turtleneck I already own and like the fit of. I'm just going to copy off of that. And I usually sew with non-stretchy cotton fabrics, which are a lot easier. This is my first time sewing stretch fabric, which I know can be really tricky and require different thread, needles, and techniques that I'm used to. So here we go. Here are my pieces. We have two sleeves, two bodice pieces, one for the front and one for the back, and a rectangular piece for the mock neck. Next, I'll line up the shoulders with fabric right sides together. I'm going to be using a ballpoint needle to sew this. This is a rounder tip, so it pushes the fibers apart when it sews rather than piercing with like a regular needle would. I'll also use a zigzag stitch to allow the seams to stretch. Next, I'll attach the sleeves by lining the middle of the sleeve to the shoulder seam, and then I'll pin it around. I'm going to be careful not to stretch any of the fabric as I'm sewing. I tried the top on at this point and some basting stitches and realized the sleeves are too small. So I think where I went wrong was not realizing that the stretch of my mock turtleneck that I was copying had a lot more stretch than the mesh fabric that I was using for this top. So I think that's where there was like a mishap there. So what I'm going to do is add a strip down to the inside seam. It's not going to be the most ideal, but it's going to be a little bit more hidden since it's on the inside of my arm. You're not going to see it as much. After the strips are added, it's time to sew the arm and the sides closed. One trick I had learned is when you're starting to sew delicate fabrics like the mesh or something that's really thin, and sometimes it just eats up your fabric underneath the feed dogs, is to add some tissue paper that helps stabilize the fabric so it doesn't get sucked into your sewing machine and just cause a whole mess. And last but not least, we'll add the mock neck, which I folded over long ways, and then sew the ends together to make a circle. I'll then add the open end to attach it to the neck hole, and then I removed my accessory drawer to make it easier for the neck hole to fit around the sewing machine. And let's see how our top turned out. Okay, for our second top, we're going to be creating something like this. I thought this was super cute. It looked pretty simple to make, but I will tell you now that like I'm done, it was way harder than I expected. Not the form and how it comes together was necessarily hard. It was just the fact that I've never sewn with stretch fabric before, so it's a huge learning curve for me. But we did get it done, and it did turn out pretty good. But I will let you know, I definitely struggled with this a lot, and I almost cried a couple of times, but we got there eventually. So let's get started with this one. So I got two fabrics. The first one is this beautiful black mesh, very similar to our first one, just in black. And then we have our athletic slash spandex slash like swimsuit type material. It's really, really stretchy. Um, so this is going to be the bodice, and then the mesh is going to go around our arms to figure out the length of what is going to wrap around my body. So, for example, if my measurement is 40 inches around my bust, I basically will cut the rectangle a little bit less than 40 just because you want it to stretch and wrap tightly around you. Not too tight where it's uncomfortable, but tight enough where you know you're not going to like have it fall down. Like it's going to hug your body nicely. So I think I did like 38 or something. So I took 2 inches. It really depends on the stretch of your material. And I just started off with that, and if it ended up being too loose, then I'll just sew some more. It's better to have a little bit extra and then cut in rather than cutting it too short and making it way too tight. So I did that, and then I took a measurement around for my arms around my body, and then took that as well, and then a measurement of how long I wanted the top to be. Instead of cutting rectangles like straight on, like I think I just did a trapezoid, just our bodies are not rectangular really, or at least mine isn't. So I did a little bit wider at the top, and then I did a more narrower towards the bottom to hug my waist and hug my bust a little bit more. And then the same thing for the arms. I also did a trapezoid type shape where it's going to be bigger at the top where my bigger part of my arm is, and then a bit more narrow where the wrist is going to be. So first we'll sew up the arms on the sides to close them up, and I didn't really feel like the need to hem this because this doesn't really fray, so I'm just going to sew it closed. So I actually made the bodice 2 layers thick because it was actually too sheer when I just had 1 layer. You could kind of see things. So I do have 2 layers for the bodice portion of it, and I'll sew that closed. Now I have the bodice, and since I have 2 layers, I'm just going to sew the top, and then we'll sew this into a tube. And this is the point where I started to go downhill. So for when I went to go sew the bodice closed, it's the same way as I did the arms. However, there's 4 layers going in, and I could not, for the life of me, get this to go. I couldn't even, I got so frustrated that I didn't even film it because I just got so frustrated. So forgive me for not having footage for that, but basically what was happening is that when I was sewing, it was moving, but the bottom thread wasn't catching, the bobbin thread wasn't catching the thread, the top thread. So it wasn't actually sewing anything. I would see the needle go in, the thread go in, but then it'll come right back out because nothing is securing it from the bottom. So I like looked through Reddit, I looked through Google, looked through YouTube for solutions, and a lot of it is like saying, you know, change your tension, change your width and length, change the needle to a different needle. I tried all of that. Nothing worked. And I was like so frustrated. I was gonna cry because I had tried just to see if my machine, maybe my timing was off because I know I had to fix my machine because of the timing before. I actually tried it on cotton, on stretch material, and it worked completely fine. So it was just this specific material that was not working well. I just couldn't get it to work. So to end the evening, because I was so frustrated, I just wanted to sew the arms to the bodice and just do like a 2 inch section to just attach it to the bodice. I ended up just hand stitching it with some stretchy thread that I had and called it a night because I couldn't do with it. I was gonna throw my sewing machine. So yeah. So the next day I tried a jersey needle to see if that would help. I'm sure I couldn't figure out the right tension and combination with my machine of how to get it to work. It was still not stitching. So I went out again and got a walking foot and a stretch needle, which are apparently different from the jersey needle, but they're like different because they're still for stretch, but it's different. I forget what the actual technical difference is, but I tried that with some success, and then I finally got the right combination for my machine for this material, to get it to go finally to get sewing. But it was definitely not pretty. It was not perfect. It was definitely still skipping stitches. It wasn't like super proper, but it was sewing. So we were getting somewhere, which I was happy about because I was like, I don't want to hand stitch this whole thing. That's gonna be terrible. But yeah, so I finally got to close the bodice closed. We have the arms together, and now it's time to put the mesh around our bodice. So for the mesh portion to add around our arms, I wanted to like ideally sandwich it in between the solid part, the bodice, so that when you fold it over, it's you don't see the seam at all. But that made it tricky with the armholes on the ends because I couldn't do that technique, at least that I thought of to do it that way. So I'm just gonna have to sew it from the top all the way around, and you're gonna have to see some of that seam. But since it's black, it's pretty hidden, I think. So I think you should be fine. We can get away with it. So I sewed it all the way around, and I found that one layer was too thin and it looked too insignificant. So I added another mesh layer on top. So we have 2 layers of mesh around. And it's pretty hard to see on camera because everything is black, but I think it did turn out not bad. I am really glad it's done. She's definitely not perfect, so please do not look at me close. You gotta stand from afar there and it should be fine. You don't have to see all of my ugly stitches because it's pretty bad. Let me show you how it turned out. Okay, so thank you so much for watching today's video. I'm so sorry about the delay of this taking so long from the last video. I really had been in a rut, to be honest with you, just with like life and things happening around the world. So just trying to keep it one day at a time and not spiral, and also not throw my sewing machine out the window because I'm so frustrated with it. But yeah, I'm really excited to be sewing again though. I'm excited to work with cotton, non-stretch again, because I am not ready to do another stretch fabric for a while. So yeah, as I said at the top of the video, we are going to be doing some blazer thrift flips, which I'm super excited about. I am going to be doing some more vacation outfits this year because I plan on thrifting and thrift flipping a lot of stuff for my upcoming vacations. I have one in May and in July, so I'm really excited for those. I think we're on a roll now, so hopefully we'll stick with it and I'll be more regular in uploading. But yeah, in case you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. And I hope you liked today's video. I promise it won't be so chaotic. No, I can't promise that. But like, hopefully it'll be less chaotic the next video. And yeah, I will see you next time. Bye.